Imagine waking up every morning as a child, knowing that outside your tiny shelter, something could be waiting to kill you. No cartoons, no video games, no school buses waiting outside, and definitely no parents saying, "Don't forget your homework." Instead, their entire childhood was spent in a world where survival was the main event. But here's the strange part. Children weren't just sitting around waiting to grow up. They were learning something far more important than mathematics. They were learning how to stay alive. But the real shocking part is some prehistoric children may have started learning survival skills almost as soon as they could walk. Imagine being 3 years old and already knowing that fire meant warmth, food, and safety. You didn't learn this from a textbook. You learned by watching everyone around you. Every movement was a lesson. How to carry something heavy, how to recognize food, and perhaps most importantly, what not to touch. Because one wrong decision could be much more serious than getting grounded. And sometimes, children learned by making mistakes. But what happened when the mistake wasn't harmless? What was the most dangerous thing prehistoric children had to learn to fear? The truth is, prehistoric children still played. They chased each other, they climbed, they wrestled, they probably made games out of almost anything. A stick could become a spear, a rock could become a target, and a muddy patch could become an entire battlefield. For a few minutes, they were just children. Until someone noticed the footprints, what had just walked past their playground. At first, nobody moved. Then one child whispered something, "Run," and suddenly, the game was over. This was the part of childhood that modern kids almost never experience. The wilderness didn't care that you were young. But here's something fascinating. The adults didn't always panic either. They had learned something the children hadn't. And that lesson might have saved their lives. So how exactly did children learn to recognize danger before it was too late? They learned to read the world. A broken branch could mean something had passed. Fresh footprints could reveal where an animal was going. Birds suddenly flying away could mean danger, and silence could be the loudest warning of all. Children watched, they copied, they failed, and then they tried again. But surviving wasn't the only thing children were learning. Because the most important lessons might not have been about animals at all. They were learning about people, who could be trusted, who could be funny, who was brave, and who was just annoying. Because yes, prehistoric children probably annoyed each other too. They probably had friendships, secrets, and games that adults didn't understand. But then came the day when one child realized childhood couldn't last forever. What happened when a prehistoric child was finally expected to become an adult? At some point, play became responsibility. Maybe it started with something simple. Carry this, watch this, remember this, and eventually do it yourself. For the first time, everyone was depending on you. And that feeling could be terrifying. Because failure didn't just embarrass you. Sometimes, failure meant everyone went hungry. But there was one place where prehistoric children could escape all of this. The night, when the work stopped. The fire became the center of everything. Children listened to stories. Stories about animals. Stories about ancestors. And maybe, stories about things nobody could explain. The stars, the moon, and the strange feeling that somewhere beyond their tiny world was something bigger. But the night also brought something prehistoric children feared more than almost anything. Darkness. The moment the fire began to die, everything changed. Every sound became terrifying. A branch snapping, leaves moving, something breathing, and suddenly, the child who had been playing all day was gone. Now they were hiding behind an adult, waiting. And then, something moved. A shadow appeared. The children froze. Nobody breathed. Then the adults shouted. The animal turned and disappeared into the darkness. Nobody celebrated. They just sat there. And slowly, the sun came up. And the children went back to being children. But there was one final thing prehistoric children were preparing for, without even realizing it. Every day they were becoming someone new, a little stronger, a little smarter, a little braver, until one day, they realized they weren't the little child anymore. The same child who once hid behind an adult was now standing beside them, ready to protect someone else. And maybe that was the real purpose of childhood, not just to survive. Because the most surprising thing about prehistoric childhood is what it tells us about ourselves. When we imagine prehistoric children, we often picture fear, danger, and endless struggle. But we forget something. They laughed, they played, they made friends. And even in a world that could be terrifying, they still found reasons to smile. So maybe prehistoric children weren't so different from us after all. The world changed, but childhood found a way to survive too.